Good afternoon. Welcome to today's presentation in Management Deployment Options. SaaS, hosted, client server, which one is best for your organization? My name is Scott Brown. I am president of Sability and a member of the Institute for Human Resources Workforce Management Advisory Board. To give you a little background about myself, I've been implementing HR, benefits, payroll, and workforce management systems since the late 80s. I caught the tail end of the large mainframe system implementations and then worked on systems throughout the life cycle of client server systems, then application service providers, Y2K, and most recently web-based and Web 2.0 based systems. My company, Sability, helps clients with their workforce management systems. We have partnerships with most of the relevant workforce management vendors. We also do hosting in our Toronto data center, so I'm on fairly familiar ground here. As a quick aside, I'll probably have some time for questions at the end, so if you have a question, go ahead and type it into that little chat YouTube webinar control panel. I'll tackle questions at the end. If you stump me, just send me an email, and I'll get back to you with an answer. Today we'll look at those technologies and how they would fit into various organizations. Most organizations today have some form of workforce management. This can be as simple as a time clock hanging on a wall or perhaps a set of Excel spreadsheets. We'll be looking at automated workforce management applications. These are characterized by having some central data storage interface which is used to interact with the application. The reliability of these workforce management software systems is extremely important to many organizations. For example, many large retailers use workforce management systems to generate schedules for their stores. These are highly complex processes that are executed weekly using optimization algorithms to minimize labor costs and ensure adequate customer service. If store schedules cannot be reliably generated and communicated, besides the ensuing chaos, this will result in increased labor costs, which will impact the bottom line. Airlines use workforce management systems to manage their highly dynamic labor demand function. If you take a second to think about all the factors that go into scheduling gate agents and how the demand is changing constantly based on flight delays, weather, equipment issues, and the list goes on, you'll understand how vital these systems are to running that business. Another characteristic of systems is they're typically the system with which employees interact with the most. In manufacturing organizations, for instance, employees clock in and out multiple times a day and use the time clock or web interface to input labor allocation information. A poorly performing workforce management system can cause a number of issues. Long lines to clock in and out, slow response time, or poor user interfaces can chew up employees or supervisors' time. It can have a distinct impact on employee morale. So for most organizations, to have a well-designed, well-implemented, and well-maintained workforce management system is essential. Fundamental to all these quote-unquote wells is to select the correct software delivery architecture. Let's break that phrase down, software delivery architecture. We have first software. As we discussed, we'll be looking at workforce management systems. Many of these discussion points, however, can be applied to HR, CRM, for instance. Delivery. How do your employees access the system? What are the response requirements? What mechanisms are invoked when your employees interact with the system? How secure are these mechanisms? Okay, software architecture definition. This is a tough one. An architecture is a set of significant decisions about the organization of a software system, the selection of structural elements and their interfaces by which the system is composed, together with their behavior as specified in the collaborations among those elements, the composition of these elements into progressively larger subsystems, and the architectural style that guides this organization. These elements and their interfaces, the collaborations and their composition. Again, this is a complex topic as denoted by that definition. So let's up a little bit into our software delivery architecture. On this slide, you'll see these are the software delivery architecture operational models we'll be talking about today. We'll define them, sometimes no easy chore. Talk about their advantages and disadvantages, and what criteria may make them attractive for your organization. The two primary categories, they're in orange, are on-premises and hosted. We actually had a bit of debate when defining these. As simple as it sounds, sometimes there are nuances that may confuse the issue. On-premises means you own the hardware. It's located at a site owned or leased by you, and your employees manage the resources. It comes in two main varieties, although, again, they're somewhat blurred these days, and we'll discuss that later. Web and client server. So those are the two main categories for on-premises. Hosted generally means the hardware is not owned or leased by you, does not reside on any of your company sites, and is maintained by another non-subsidiary organization. There are several options under the hosting category. Full means you've generally outsourced most of your IT. Even though this is not a decision typically made by workforce management managers, there are a number of considerations for implementing and running systems under this scenario. So we'll really focus under the full hosting category on what considerations, once you're fully hosted, what kind of organization on your projects. ASP stands for Application Service Provider. In our context, these are organizations that host only specific applications, as opposed to hosting a company's entire IT infrastructure. They emerged hosting client-server applications, but later evolved into hosting web applications as well. ASPs really never achieved their predicted market potential, and we'll discuss some. Our most recent addition to the diagram is software as a service, or SaaS. SaaS systems have become rather popular rather quickly. So we'll spend quite a bit of time discussing this architecture. Right now, what I'd like to do is do a quick little poll. We would like to find out what architectures you are running in your workforce management system, and that might help us direct the discussion a bit as we. So Amy, can we go ahead and invoke the poll? Bear with us a second while it comes up. I think the poll is open. And basically, we're trying to find out what current existing software architectures your company is running. So take a second, and we'll leave that open for a minute. So we'll give you a couple more seconds here before we close the poll. Okay, it looks like this kind of lines up with our current understanding of what the market is right now. It looks like about 2/3 of you are using on-premises. 33% are hosted with an ASP. We don't have any SaaS or fully outsourced. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about on-premises. These applications are typically run within your company. For on-premises applications, companies own the licenses for the software. Licenses are purchased usually for a large upfront cost and yearly maintenance based on a percentage of the purchase cost, or most typically list costs for the software. Companies will need to ensure that they have adequate and supported hardware to run the systems. Some software runs only on certain brands of hardware and certain versions of operating systems. Installations typically require multiple servers. You got to have web servers, you got to have application servers, you got to have your database servers. Also, you might have license servers, report servers. The actual application may have specific software and hardware requirements as well. If you are evaluating an on-premise solution, be sure to have a clear understanding of hardware requirements you will need to meet. This can be a big ticket item and sometimes require a lot of lead time for delivery and installation. This goes for software requirements as well. Systems sometimes have very strict application server requirements and database server requirements. most often down to specific versions. So make sure you understand what the requirements are in terms of not only what app server database, but what versions are supported as well. What are the advantages and disadvantages of on-premise systems? The advantages are you have ultimate flexibility. You own it, you run the server. Customizable. This is the most customizable package solution. Again, it runs on your servers. You have a lot of flexibility in terms of what can be customized. And again, absolute control. Again, relates to the two previous categories. Interface flexibility. Again, all options here. You can go directly into the database for your interfaces in and out, EDI, all the way up to web services and everything in between. And again, one of the advantages of on-premises is direct database access. You can get to the database for better or for worse. Some of the disadvantages are, some of the disadvantages are scalability is limited by your hardware. If you have a big acquisition, you may need to involve capacity planning and invoke hardware acquisition, which again, a big ticket item, lots of leads. Deep expertise is required. If you get anything out of this presentation, you'll understand that workforce management systems are very complex systems, and in larger organizations have very, very stringent performance requirements. Another disadvantage is you have a tendency to over-customize. You do have the range, you do have absolute control. Sometimes it may be easier to try and customize the system rather than take a good hard look at your processes and really figure out if you have another path other than customizations. Upgrades require a lot of resources. Sometimes approaches or exceeds implementation costs. If you fall far behind, you risk falling out of support or greatly increasing upgrade complexity. So what indicators would push you in one direction or another? So what is your decision criteria? Is on-premises right for my organization would be the question we'd be asking here. And the yes column lead me to an on-premise solution. Do you have, if you're a large enterprises typically have very complex requirements, predictable, moderate growth, but also very high transaction volumes. Imagine a large retailer with 10,000 stores, 200,000 employees, and clock transaction volumes in the morning and the afternoon. And again, I'm sorry, I keep hitting my mouse button here. All right, I think we're on the right slide now. So what would indicate that on-premises would not work for your organization? Limited technical resources. As we discussed, these are very complex systems with high visibility. Companies, both large and small, are significantly challenged when managing these systems. Are you a distributed organization? This is a little bit difficult for organizations that are widely distributed. This can be mitigated if your organization has excellent communication infrastructure to your remote sites. But again, that structure needs to be evaluated to see what impact workforce management systems would have. Can it support the increased demands of workforce management? And lastly, limited capital. These systems can require significant upfront investment in software and implementation. So another subcategory of on-premises are web-based systems. This is really the predominant model for companies seeking software up until the past couple of years. And in the past couple of years when SaaS began to gain adoption. We'll discuss SaaS in more detail. Ubiquitous interface. The web-based interface is something very familiar to anyone who's bought a book off of Amazon. Again, standard hardware, standard system software, operating system, application servers, database servers, and application software. So on-premises client server, again, an older technology, but done properly, it's very fast and secure. Clients interact directly with the database or app server protocols or networks. Client-server apps have the look and feel much more like Word or Excel, although web-based technologies are catching up fast. These architectures tend to be much more difficult to install, maintain, and tune in distributed organizations. Client-server apps were designed for lots of small, quick transactions. Running these systems over a wide area network tends to greatly tax the wide area network and the user as well due to very slow response times because their design criteria really were for local area networks with again, very fast, quick transactions. It's very difficult to meet the client-server connectivity requirements over a WAN, although it can be done. It's a complex setup, multiple unique components. Usually third-party support is required for an installation. They have the most restrictive software stack, meaning you have to have the proper components, proper versions, and again, some you may not currently be running, or some version conflicts, which can cause organizations some heartburn. Perhaps most significant of all, it requires a client install. This makes upgrades much more challenging. You have to touch every remote desktop. So, and even in organizations where you have automated remote installation capabilities, a certain percentage of these will fail, and you'll need to manage those. And as I mentioned before, Web 2.0 technology is functionally equivalent in many ways to client server. So again, it's kind of sunsetting client server in some ways. On-premises, other considerations. If you're in an on-premise environment, you really should minimize or eliminate customizations. Here's the #1 lesson that on-premises customers have learned over the years. Customizations are expensive, more expensive than they realized. It's the upgrades or getting into a position where upgrades is impossible that causes issues. Now, it is possible to manage systems effectively with customizations, but it does take a lot of discipline. Documentation is paramount. And use customizations only for the requirements that are deal breakers and cannot be met with a base package, or you can see no way to alter your business processes to conform with software. The lesson here is just get as close to base package functionality as possible. Change control. Now, I'm not talking really change management, but systems change control. We'll define that as a highly disciplined process that ensures the proper testing, migration, and impact analysis occurs before any changes are made to the production system. This ensures no unscheduled disruptions will occur in the production system. You'll find this with SaaS providers, or if you go fully hosted, again, they have very strict change control requirements because effective change control is vital for a stable system. Ensure you have access to expertise. Performance issues abound in large workforce management systems. Database row counts in large workforce management clients can approach 1 billion rows in one table. Consider also these tables are being inserted or updated by clocking transactions coming of 200,000 in the span of roughly 10 minutes around shift changes. Well, you get the idea. Oh, while I'm at it, if you are running on premises and you don't have an application-specific archive process, you should be looking into that. It can get much more difficult over time if you let it go on too long. If I said any more, it'd be a shameless plug. Sometimes the vendor is not enough, especially with legacy systems. Sometimes the expertise you need lies outside of the vendor. Know where your vendor stands with regard to on-premises licensed software. What is their license install base? What is their direction? What's their long-term support? It's possible it's not an issue for you, but some vendors plan to phase out on-premises support and offer only SaaS. First, talk to your vendor on their roadmap around on-premises. What have they been selling lately? Enhancements land first. Do they land in the SaaS round if they have that offering, or do they land in the on-premises versions? Okay, moving on to hosted ASP. An application service provider is excuse me. So yeah, one of the things that I usually do when I do a presentation and looking for definitions is I look it up on Wikipedia. Wikipedia says an application service provider is a business that provides computer-based services to customers over a network. And again, they go on a bit. This is not what we're talking about with ASPs. And in all fairness, in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, the ASP model, as we know it in ASP, was a small set of applications, primarily HR, payroll, benefits, finance, ERP. CRM was really too new to have been caught on the ASP wave. At one point, it was all the rage. Gartner predicted a $22 billion market by 2006. That never happened. So what did happen? There is a gap between the decline of ASPs and the rise of SaaS. There were a few factors that were going on in that. The demise of ASP coincided with the dot-com bust, Y2K, and the availability and adoption of the internet for internal business use. Coincidence or not, this perfect storm of three disruptive factors capsized or at least significantly slowed the growth of ASPs. Clients reverted back to the on-premises model for a period of about 10 years. By the way, I love to talk about this stuff. I actually called a buddy last night who worked for an ASP point. The jury's still out a bit, so if you have any further thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. All right, hosted ASP. Again, stands for Application Service Provider. It's often confused or mistakenly synonymous with SaaS. Application software is hosted in an individual environment for each client. Isolation was an issue. These days we have a very, very different model. We have very efficient where many virtual machines, which are every bit as functionally equivalent to a full app server, database server, report server, can run on one machine. You can have an entire cluster, many clients, or both running on one piece of hardware. And the best part is, on a properly configured virtual machine meta system, you can bring up another client just by copying a file and a bit of web configuration. Quite different than the model ASPs were trying to operate under in the 90s. Modern day ASPs have generally replatformed around VMs, and it's made the model much more viable than it was then. Under the ASP model, code customizations are possible. They can be performed by the ASP, by you, or by a third party. Database access is possible as well. Special communication mechanisms are typically required, most typically VPN. In some ways, they're largely historical, even though they are still around. Achieved market predictions, as we discussed. All the disadvantages of on-premises, plus a lot of the disadvantages of hosted systems. Individual code bases and separate databases were modified schemas. It made management very expensive. That ASP model really has evolved into SaaS, a more efficient software delivery model, if you can accept the restrictions. In terms of licensing, or the ASP can own the license and pay maintenance. Both models were deployed, and I believe both models are still deployed to this date, although typically for an ASP, you would own the licenses and pay the maintenance. Hosted ASP Web currently exists in a few forms. Legacy, grandfathered in from existing contracts. One of the primary players, which is now owned by AT&T, still provides quite a bit of hosting and is very active in that market. One of the forms that exists in are vendor offerings. Sometimes this is the only option for a true ASP model. Co-located really means that you own machines, but they're located in a different space. Again, this is almost kind of a hybrid between on-premises and ASP with toward on-premises. Hosted ASP client server. This is pretty much dead, null, and void. There's really no activity, and perhaps some legacy clients are still on client-server ASP. But again, it's really been sunsetted by Web 2.0 functionality, and it just was a great model to be hosted offsite. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of ASP model? Well, it's very similar to on-premises in a lot of ways. The advantages are it's more flexible than SaaS. It's customizable, and direct database access is possible. These next items are quite different than SaaS. With a hosted ASP model, you do get the scalability that you would get with SaaS, with advantages as we previously discussed with flexibility, customizable. So no infrastructure resources are required. And when I'm talking about infrastructure resources, I'm talking about hardware. I'm also talking about the guys who are running the systems. So again, that expertise, the manpower is not required, nor are machines. The disadvantages, again, you've invoked a complex change control process, a lot of which lies outside of your organization, and you don't have control over those things. Still require a lot of resources. The upgrade is typically on you. Economically, they did not prove to be viable in the long run, at least in the context of how they were deployed in the 90s. But however, many issues have been mitigated by virtual machines and virtualization. It's somewhat of a fragmented market, may require some creativity if you decide this is the direction that you want to head in. So what would indicate that you should be on a hosted ASP? Are you willing to host with a vendor or third party or co-locate in a data center? If you have an appetite for that, you possibly may be a candidate for ASP. Are you existing ASP customer? Well, you might want to continue. The things that would are contraindications for hosted ASP. Can you meet the SaaS requirements? You know, I think one thing coming out of this presentation you're going to figure out is if you can go SaaS, you perhaps should consider that strongly. It is a better model and tends to be much more cost effective. If you're a small and medium-sized business, you probably don't want to go ASP. Again, SaaS is probably your ticket there, unless, again, you have very complex implementation requirements. So that wraps up application service providers. Next category is full hosting, and this basically means the entire IT infrastructure or IT department is outsourced. Sometimes they stay in the same location, same offices when they're outsourced. Upon outsourcing, those employees that were previously yours were transferred over to the full hosting company, and the premises that the IT organization was located is now managed by the full hosting provider. In the full hosting space are Sability, AT&T, Verizon, IBM, and EDS. This decision is typically made at the corporate level. So we'll discuss this one in a bit of a different context. We'll be looking at the impacts, the differences, and the unique things about the full hosting model to help you manage your system within your environment. Generally, full hosting providers are very, very good at maintaining their system and maintaining their just a little quick discussion around uptime statistics. Again, you're probably going to see this in the SaaS model. You're going to see vendors quoting these kind of statistics. Uptime statistics are generally quoted in what's known as the number of nines. And what that means is the number of nines following 99%. So, for instance, 1 9 is 99.9% uptime. That sounds pretty good, right? Well, with an uptime of 99.9, it translates to an outage of 45 minutes per month. And typically, guess where that 45 minutes is going to fall? It's probably not going to fall at 2 o'clock in the morning when nobody's on the system. It's probably going to fall right when all the supervisors are approving timesheets on Friday afternoon, and you've really taxed the system and loaded the system down. Once a month, 45 minutes, probably not acceptable for most organizations. Changes require more planning. You must have providers' schedules for changes. They typically have fairly restricted maintenance windows. Again, complex change control procedures that lie outside of your organization. You need to build in more time in your project plan for whatever changes you need to implement when you're fully hosted. You may need to wait for those maintenance windows. Scheduling impacts, setting up VPN or access, or opening ports in a firewall literally can take weeks to get right. Solutions may include geographically dispersed, fully redundant sites. And what this means is a full hosting provider actually can have data centers in multiple cities, multiple countries, multiple continents, and they have the capabilities to keep those systems synchronized such that if one goes down, the other is available and can be switched over in a matter of seconds. All right. To one of the main topics of our presentation, SaaS. So let's define it. SaaS stands for Software as a Service. Some of the characteristics are it's off-premises, it's hosted or managed by typically software vendor. Sorry, guys. Typically, it has one code base, which means no code customizations. The architecture is controversial. We'll spend a little bit of time on this. Although we don't feel like it's one of the primary factors, this is one thing that the market it seems to be a little bit hyper-focused on. So we're going to go into the architecture in some detail. And since the topic is software delivery architectures, it's probably appropriate. So bear with me; it might get a little technical. But the controversy really revolves around multi-tenancy. One of the technological enablers of SaaS has been the sustained expansion in computer power. I was watching Colbert Report the other night and saw one of my favorite futurists, Ray Kurzweil. You may know him by Kurzweil synthesizers, and also he's actually one of the at about 20 startups, an amazing guy. He pulled out his iPhone 4 and noted it was 100,000 times smaller and 3 billion times more powerful than the computers he used as a student. Anyway, this enormous hardware capability, and again, based on rough calculations using Moore's law, which states computer power doubled every 18 months. If a server had enough processing power to host one client, back when ASPs or hosted were in vogue, a computer that could host one client can now host 1,000. Well, to be successful, this demanded a different software model. Multi-tenant capable software means the software can host in the same installation. For true, strict multi-tenancy, this means the clients would reside within the same database, using the same app servers, exact same code, and the same web servers. To ensure clients stay separate and cannot see each other's data, the workforce management application needs to have that conceptually built into the application architecture. And I want to say that one more time because that's really kind of the crux. To assure clients stay separate and cannot see each other's data, the workforce management application needs to have that conceptually built into the application architecture. Now, that's true and valid if you're a SaaS purist. As it turns out, app servers and databases are perfectly happy running within virtual machines. And this really provides another option for SaaS. There are, no doubt, people with pitchforks and heating up their buckets of tar. It really does seem that heated sometimes. But people get very emotionally attached to their technological opinions. But really, taking a rational viewpoint, under certain conditions, SaaS can be effectively deployed in different scenarios. These typically couple virtual machine technology and the SaaS architecture. So let's talk a little bit about the crux of the controversy and dive fairly deep into multi. Again, as discussed, some form of multi-tenancy is required, which means multiple clients reside on the same computer cluster. There's several flavors, and again, another take on the controversy, and this really boils down to two viewpoints, and I'll try to argue both sides. The client really should not care This is an architectural decision. It's run by the software vendors. If the software vendor has been providing this service, if he has referenceable clients and a competitively priced offering, really clients should not be overly concerned. The other viewpoint is what is the long-term strategy of the vendors? What are the economics surrounding a service delivery? Can he maintain? Can he stay in business? Again, we're looking back at the ASPs. We really found the model they were going after was not economically viable. We believe this is the case for SaaS and even the non-pure SaaS. But again, my answer, and again, opinions here, but the architecture question really should take a backseat to more important concerns, such as meeting your functional requirements and user experience requirements with no customization or minimum number of customizations. Keep your attention squarely focused on that objective. Everything, and to some degree including budget, should take a backseat to that one. Multi-tenancy flavors. We've got 4 different versions of flavors here. And again, this may get a little technical, but you're going to hear these if you're looking at SaaS, so bear with me here. We have what I termed as pseudo multi-tenancy. Each client has its own app server and database server. They are totally separate, typically virtual machines. This model works well for the upper tier of mid-market or the larger mid-market clients, and all the way up through enterprise size. Code is typically shared, although exceptions can be made, and through clever configuration can be done rather efficiently if all software builds are automated. The code-centric flavor, all app servers share the same code, simplifying maintenance and upgrades. Separate databases are maintained, usually because the app is not multi-tenant aware. This configuration does not support any code customizations, and therefore simplifies patch applications and upgrades. The strict SaaS flavor is really the pure SaaS model. Multi-tenant support within the application enables many clients to reside within the same database. One environment with many clients is much easier to manage than many environments. Sometimes large clients require special treatment, and no one wants to be on the same machine as Walmart when you're trying to close payroll. Models for. Due to intense performance requirements, very large enterprise workforce management SaaS clients require their own environments for workforce management systems. Well, at least for the next 15 years, when computer power increases again by 1,000-fold. Multi-tenant database models. Just very quickly, this is within some of the SaaS multi-tenant flavors. Are going to want to understand this, again, if you're evaluating SaaS systems. Separate means each tenant has its own database. So each client, if you're a company, you would have your very own database, separate. Table isolated. Actually, database systems have the capability of letting multiple tenants reside in the same database, but with different sets of tables. So all the structures would typically, table structures would stay the same, but again, they could be managed within the same database. And then multi-tenant database models is the shared model, where all tenants use the same database and tables. So all your data would actually be sitting in the same database table as another client, but because the application supports multi-tenancy and guarantees isolation and separation, you should have no worries in terms of data exposure. Software as a service advantages. Again, you require, a lot of these are going to be similar to the model, but again, you require minimal infrastructure. No IT resources are required outside of browser support, network support. Upgrades are almost a non-issue. It's really the vendor's headache. And just an aside here, since the vendor typically develops the enhancements and is responsible for completing the upgrade, that they really have a huge incentive to ensure the upgrade process is built to execute smoothly. So again, the vendor is responsible for the software, they're responsible for the upgrade, they're also responsible for executing the upgrade. Vendor has hosting expertise and a track record. This actually could be better than the hosting experience you have within your own company. The scalability is effectively unlimited. Typically, vendors have carefully calculated access capacity or what reserves they have on tap to ensure that they have capacity for sales and client growth. Client growth, as you add employees, is really a form of organic sales to them. If your employee population grows, so do your fees. This is really not much different than some of the on-premises licensing models that were based on employees. SaaS, however, tends to be much more granular and automatically scalable. Pay as you go. If your employee population grows, so do your fees. SaaS, however, as mentioned, tends to be, and you also have no added hardware costs as you scale up. No large capital expenditures. Pricing is generally per employee per month. That's known with the industry as PEPM. There's usually a base charge based on a PEPM, per employee per month base charge, and then other charges for additional modules such as attendance, advanced scheduling, or whatever else the vendor offers. There's typically not a large implementation cost, and this is key. For the mid-market, most are doing fixed fee implementations or even building in the implementation cost into the monthly PEPM fees. Also, because of a typically reasonable implementation cost, clients tend to be a bit more mobile. So the economic value of satisfied customers is greater, which is a fancy way of saying that if you're not happy, it's easier to switch to another SaaS providers. So SaaS companies tend to be more focused on customer satisfaction. Disadvantages, no data access, no direct database access. Sad but true. This is one of the things you give up by going SaaS. But many organizations find it's not as necessary as they thought. And you don't really have to worry about your data administrator having access to all your company's data. He's not going to find out how much your CEO is making. No customizations, configuration only. In some ways, this is a blessing in disguise for many companies. There are instances where customizations are necessary, but it's really not possible in the true SaaS world. Slower turnaround for any systems request. Usually, systems requests involve integration, which is the one area that requires what's close to a customization, and this is typically done by the vendor. You also have no control over upgrade timing. This can be an issue for this can be an issue for organizations such as retailers or airlines that have serious software as a service. What are the indicators that would push you in the direction of software as a service or SaaS? A culture of innovation or business-driven decisions is again, this is a culture thing, but if your company typically is on the leading edge and looking at innovations or wrapping their business model in a nimble business model, again, a great indicator for SaaS. If you're in a position where you have very high growth, you need a lot of potential scalability, great option for SaaS. You have to be willing to redefine your processes. If you have a dispersed or remote workforce, your SaaS provider is going to handle your infrastructure. Everything is web-based, becomes extremely easy to deploy. What are the contraindicators? Do you have special integration requirements? Do you require direct database access to interface to get things in and out of your systems? Sometimes a unique security requirement can knock out SaaS. Think about it in terms of the CIA. I don't think the CIA is going to be turning over their employee database to run on a hosted vendor. But never say never, right? Do you have a requirement for a high degree of customizations? That probably means you're not a good SaaS candidate. Or very, very large enterprises. And again, depending on what the SaaS providers, they might grow to encompass extremely large enterprises, but it's probably not a viable option right now. We're running a little close on time. The next few slides, I'm going to go ahead and skip through. I think a lot of this stuff we've already talked about. Just pausing briefly to make sure I've covered all the points that I wanted to. One of the points on what I'm calling pseudo SaaS, the technology is really evolving, and you have to balance your current needs with future consideration. Where are these SaaS vendors going? Where are you going as a company? Some other considerations around SaaS. These mainly tie to making sure you're covered in the event of the SaaS vendor having a problem or something in terms of disaster recovery. Be sure to have a mechanism to get a copy of your data. Determine how frequently that backup will be possible. Again, this is probably vendor driven. This could scale anyway from weekly backups to to potentially some mechanism that updates you almost real time. Determine if that frequency will meet your needs. Ensure you back up your configuration as well as your data, and this is super important. So we spent some time visiting with some clients and some current SaaS clients and getting some ideas around what they found to be helpful, what their initial concerns are, and after they implemented, what did they find? Were those initial concerns on target? So it's a little bit difficult to get a handle on SaaS growth because of all the different definitions and I guess the lack of good definitions between hosted, ASP, and SaaS. But what do firms see as incentives? And again, this is before they went SaaS. They like the pricing. SaaS is not necessarily cheaper, but they love the simplified model and the direct scalability with their growth. Speed of implementation. That's absolutely one of the great attractive things of SaaS. Customer service. Clients were anticipating the low barrier to switching systems and that happy customers are vital to vendors. So what's inhibiting buyers? There's a lot of concern around security and business continuity, although I'd say much less so than a couple of years ago. Uptime and performance, and vendor viability. One quick point, several of the SaaS vendors actually do have multiple channels, and their software is white labeled through other directions. So again, that will probably give you security around vendors who might be questionable in terms of viability. So if one vendor goes out, you always have the other one to go to. So after their implementation, what worked? Speed, cost to deploy and implement, shared responsibility, and fixed cost. Again, this is something that the clients who went SaaS gave a thumbs up on. Vendor service. This built-in incentive for vendors is powerful, and actually did find that vendors' customer service with SaaS was better than what they had experienced with on-premises or ASP. They loved the simple model of fees. That worked very well for them, so the cost of ownership was within bounds. They found that the vendors tended to be technical leaders and were much more innovative. They tended to foster a culture of innovation internal to the vendors, and actually it had an impact and reached out to the customers. This may be some of a false correlation that soon disappears because the SaaS market leaders typically are the first ones out there and therefore the most nimble and technically adept. But we would love to see this continuation, this trend continue. Security. Companies noted vendors tended to be more proactive than their own IT departments around security. Once again, vendors have a lot of motivation to provide a highly secure application. This is many times clients' primary concern when evaluating. Any security issues could have a serious impact on sales. Clients have been happy to report better than expected experience in this area. User interface and accessibility. The current height of technology is SaaS-based Web 2.0. Working within the software is a very pleasant experience. Use it for a day or two, and you'll never be able to go back to straight web-based applications. Scalability. Close to a non-issue with most customers. You have quite a bit of, almost infinite scalability on tap. The only concern some vendors, some clients have found, scalability around mobile infrastructure is very challenging, and this is really just an artifact of mobile infrastructure as opposed to the client. So What should you be considering? Just very quickly, due diligence. We love SaaS. However, SaaS is not necessarily slam dunk. Adopters advise extra attention to be paid to these areas. Evaluate the vendor roadmap and enhancement history. Did the vendor meet targets in the past? Are planned enhancements pertinent to your requirements? What have the vendor's customers experienced when upgrading? Assess vendor management teams. Does the management team have a successful track record? Request detailed documentation around security. Look at their SAS 70 Type 2 or ISO 27001. Evaluate integration closely. This again is one of the things you should spend a lot of attention on. Capabilities need to be designed into the API, so you really need to do a deep dive and understand their API mechanisms. And integration represents a very large part of the implementation effort. So again, that's it in a nutshell, in an hour. Software delivery architectures and operational models. Thanks for attending the presentation. I don't think we have a lot of time for questions. I apologize for running us up to the mark. But again, you can reach me. There's my email address, scott.brown@sability.com. You can follow me on Twitter at that really should say @ Scotty Brown or Sability. Again, thank you for your time. Please don't forget to fill out the survey, and thanks again.